After decades of war, conflict and instability, Kashmir remains one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints and a highly sensitive topic here in India. The government says more than 40,000 people have died in the last 20 years. Human rights groups put the figure much higher. But did India do all it could to minimize casualties? Did it heed the concerns and suffering of the Kashmiri people? How many of the accusations against it are simply hostile propaganda? I'm the outsider. This is our motion tonight. India should be ashamed of its record in Kashmir. We're speaking for that motion, Vrinda Grover, lawyer in the Delhi High Court and human rights activist. And with her, Junaid Mattu, Srinagar district president of the Jammu and Kashmir People's Conference, who writes widely on the issues of the state. Against the motion, General B.S. Jaswal, former Northern Army commander in the Indian Armed Forces. And with him, Wajahat Habibullah, chairman of the National Commission for Minorities. He has served in a number of official roles in Jammu and Kashmir, including as Divisional Commissioner, Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. So could I first ask Vrinda Grover to speak for the motion, please?
Sure. As a constitutional democracy, India is obliged to protect the fundamental rights guaranteed in its constitution and the human rights in international covenants to which it is a party, like the ICCPR. Foremost among this is the protection of the right to life and personal liberty against arbitrary deprivation. Also, the enjoyment of fundamental freedoms, including the freedom to express one's political opinion or aspirations and the right to assemble and protest democratically. The labyrinth of laws, institutions and security apparatus that operate in Kashmir create the conditions for human rights violations. And these include illegal detention and arrest, torture, extrajudicial execution, sexual violence, and enforced disappearances. It must be understood that these violations are neither incidental nor accidental, but are a consequence of the militarization and the attendant impunity in the valley. India has maintained that there is no armed conflict in the country, and yet, because of the troops stationed there, it is perhaps the highest militarized zone in the world. What is at peril is the daily life of the people and the right to life, which cannot be derogated from both under national and international law, even in times of an emergency. About 68,000 people are said to have died in the conflict. Over 8,000 people have disappeared. The list of those tortured and injured is too long to enumerate over here. The matrix of special laws under which the armed forces operate in the valley, such as the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, sanctions the arbitrary use of excessive power, including the right to shoot to kill, to arrest and detain without warrant, to search and seize without warrant, to destroy property, all on mere suspicion. What makes the impunity rampant is that the law prevents and makes them immune from any prosecution.
Could you wrap up, please?
Yes. Data shows that not a single person has been prosecuted for human rights violations in Kashmir. The morale of troops trumps the human rights of the people of Kashmir. India's human rights violations there make it vulnerable to the charge of crimes against humanity.
I must ask you to stop. Vrinda Grover, thank you very much indeed. You say that very little has been done in the way of justice. In March this year, the state government announced that more than 400 cases had been launched against security forces personnel in the past 3 years alone. This was a written response to the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. So I don't know where you're getting your information from, but they're putting out very different information. Of those 444 cases, almost 300 have appeared in local courts.
May I respond with an information from the Ministry of Defense, an RTI application filed by me asking how many security personnel has been sanctioned for prosecution for human rights violations in Kashmir between 1989 and 2011. The answer, this is a document from the Ministry of Defense. They received 44 applications for sanction for prosecution. They have rejected 33 applications. 11 applications are pending consideration. Please do the maths. It says nil sanction for prosecution granted for any.
So what is the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly talking about then?
They're talking about cases that have been initiated, not prosecuted.
And you've now had the Central Bureau of Investigation brought in as well?
Yes.
on the auspices of the Supreme Court, 5 soldiers accused of murder. The Supreme Court has also stepped in here, ordering the military to make up its mind where to have the case heard, either in civilian court or in military court.
Well,
so it's not true to say that nothing has been done. You're asking this audience to believe that India should be ashamed. Well, when bad things happen, if redress is carried out, why should they still be ashamed? When there was an interlocutors report, they had a government panel. They appointed a government panel. They sent it there. They talked to 700 different delegations to find out what was wrong and what was the way forward. Should India be ashamed about that as well?
The report of the interlocutors talks about truth and reconciliation. The missing concept is justice. Justice is integral to any conversation and solution in Kashmir.
It talked about all the wrongs that they thought had been committed.
But did not suggest justice as the remedy or the way forward.
It talked about ending the indiscriminate use of the Public Safety Act, didn't it?
Those people who have committed the wrongs need to be made accountable. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, in the Pathribal case that you mentioned, the verdict gave the choice to the army. The army most predictably said, we will court-martial them.
All right, Vrinda Grover, thank you very much indeed. Could I please ask General Jaswal to speak against the motion?
Yeah, I do not agree with the motion which has been set in over here. I think we should be proud of our actions in Jammu and Kashmir, despite the constraints we have, as a matter of fact, been able to bring the situation to near normalcy. I think the casus belli of this entire motion being set is a psychological dislocation which Pakistanis, the separatists and other inimical forces to India, they've been able to achieve, albeit falsely. They have systematically been paralyzing our entire endeavor in this state, whether it was political, whether economic, diplomatic, or HR violation. I'll respond to Brinda later on. I mean, the exaggeration on human rights violation has indeed had a seismic effect. Just to quote 1,500 plus cases, only 35, 2.32%, have been proved right. If any persona who needs to be dubbed as a person who should be ashamed, it should be Pakistan and the separatists. True democracy is prevailing in the state. Where else do you find the separatists being permitted to voice their feelings openly, the print being free to voice anything out there, and the separatists even go outside and they have dialogue with our arch rivals, Pakistan. I would like to make a mention here of the armed forces because time and again, army comes into play. If there is a situation in J&K which is normal today, majority of the credit should go to the armed forces. Unfortunately, time and again, the army gets crucified on the altar of criticism, despite the sacrifices which they do out there.
All right, General Jaswal, thank you very much indeed. What's India got to hide in Kashmir?
We have nothing to hide out there, and
I ask you this because here's the latest edition of The Economist, which has India in search of a dream on its cover. And when you open it up, the censor has put a black sticker over. It's not a cartoon. It's not anything insulting to India. It's a map of Kashmir. It's a map showing disputed territories.
I'll tell you the background as to why this particular map, it basically...
Does that show free speech? Is that something to be proud of?
Beg your pardon?
Does that show free speech that you were talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
People free to say what they want and show what they want. That shows it.
No, that's upon an individual, the way he wants to project the whole thing.
You approve of that?
No, I don't approve of it.
The state censor?
No, because the territory probably in the map, what he's tried to show, it is basically in Siachen. Because instead of following the line from NJ 9842 due northwards, he has shown it in an incline.
The point is people should be able to show what they want.
No, they
Indians
cannot.
should be
They
given
cannot
a choice.
show. They cannot.
Oh, you can't show the wrong map.
They cannot show a wrong map. It has to be blanked out.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're in favour of censorship. General Jaswal, why is it that it takes a government-appointed panel to tell the army in Kashmir to stop intimidating and harassing citizens?
No, this is a perception again. I think...
This is what the interlocutors panel said.
no, but they've not understood...
They recommended that there was a need to end the intimidation and harassment of citizens by the police, the paramilitary and the army. It's in their report,
No, it's
which was published earlier this year.
I'll tell you, what you're trying to say is that the mere presence of armed forces over there, like she has said, the armored vehicles, etc., what are there, it's intimidation. But I would like to say and
But I don't think the panel concluded that. They are quite specific to end the intimidation and harassment of citizens. Why are the security forces still intimidating and harassing
no, we are
citizens?
not intimidating. I will tell you, if in case
So how did the panel get it so wrong? They spoke to 700
No,
delegations.
there's so many things wrong with the panel.
Why? It was a government-appointed panel.
Have they lauded the role of the army?
It was a government-appointed panel.
No, that's okay.
They spoke to the army on many occasions.
No, they have not.
They didn't speak to the army
They did go
at
to
all?
15 Corps, and the perspective which the army had given, that has not been brought out.
So you say it's unfair?
It's unfair.
So the list of wrongs that they talked about that the Kashmiris have suffered, which were rigged elections, the dismissal of elected governments and installation of pliant ones, the arrest of popular leaders, the choking of dissenting voices through harsh laws, you don't recognize any of those things?
No, there are certain
that
things.
India
there are certain wrongs which
is
are
responsible
there.
for.
There are inadequacies over there, but that's in a system. It happens.
So India shouldn't be ashamed of those things?
No, there's no question of being ashamed about it. I think despite the adverse situation, if we've been able to bring back the situation from what it was in early 90s to a near state of normalcy now, I think why should we be ashamed of it?
All right, General Jaswal, thank you very much indeed. Junaid Mattu, could I ask you to speak for the motion, please?
Tim, because the motion at hand is so explicit in what it states, I would start by stating that the greatness of great nations lies in accepting its fragilities and its follies. And I believe India is a great nation, and India has committed its share of blunders in Kashmir. I think it's also very important to draw a distinction between the state of India and the people of India, the nation of India. It often happens that states, as is their habit, have this way of tutoring an entire nation about what to believe under the paranoia or construct of national interest or national security. And Indians fit into the stereotype mold with relative ease. And I say this because the ordinary Indian has huge moral costs to bear when it comes to what the Indian military and the Indian paramilitary forces have been allowed to do in Kashmir. Putting this into perspective, there is no doubt about the fact that Kashmiris had this romantic concept, if I may, this aspiration of freedom. But how did the Indian state, again, when I say the Indian state, I mean the Indian governments and establishments that over the years have dealt with Kashmir, how did the Indian state respond to that romantic aspiration? The response was purely operational. The key word was conflict management. The response of the Indian state, its leadership in the armed forces or the opinion makers, was purely operational, managing the conflict, rather than politically engaging with the people of Kashmir. And when you talk about operational mechanisms, you talk about sending the army into civilian areas and giving it immunity under laws like the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the Disturbed Areas Act, or the Public Safety Act. And when that happens, in the fight against combatants, non-combatants get sucked in. And that translates into huge human rights abuses, which have happened in Kashmir, which nobody can deny. When you speak of fake encounters, or when you speak of enforced disappearances, or when you speak of extrajudicial killings.
Could you come to a close, please?
There are numerous examples you can quote. And in quoting those examples, you can get lost into an array of statistics. But the debate at hand is, should India be ashamed of its role in Kashmir? As I said, I think in this context, being ashamed of its role in Kashmir leads to the greatness, an exhibition of greatness.
Okay.
It indicates a redress. And
I have to stop you.
And I think that reconciliation is the only way forward, and for that, a redress needs to be done.
Junaid Mattu, thank you very much indeed. Shame when the armed forces of this great nation have lost 5,300 people fighting for a piece of sovereign India. You're really asking the audience to feel shame for the sacrifice that the armed forces have made?
Tim, as much as my
for
heart...
this country?
as much as my heart goes out to every life that has been lost, that's a feature of war.
Shame if a few bad apples overstepped the mark and that there were a few human rights abuses?
I wouldn't term it as a few human rights abuses. I would term it as the failure of the constitutional duty of the state of India to uphold the constitutional rights and liberties of the people of Kashmir.
You were complaining about the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, but the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of that in 1998, didn't it? The Supreme Court, which has a record of protecting the underdogs in this society.
Unfortunately,
of protecting individuals.
What I'm trying to say is that the system views Kashmir with a special focus. And when I say special, that has its advantages as well as its disadvantages. And Kashmiris, unfortunately, have seen the end of disadvantages in that context.
When you say shame, and it is a big word, you're taking no account of the rehabilitation efforts that have been made, the attempts to scale down the security presence, the government's promise to amend the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and its constant emphasis on the fact that it will not tolerate human rights violations. This from the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, also from the Defence Minister Antony. Well, taking no account of those things as well?
Rhetoric is as old as India's role in Kashmir, and I am taking account of it.
Well, the rhetoric is commitment, isn't it? To do something about it if human rights violations have taken place.
And I welcome those commitments. What I'm trying to say is that Kashmiris deserve a closure before they can move on and be a part of this society and system. And reconciliation is the only way forward. And for that to happen, I'm not saying that India needs to constantly say sorry to Kashmiris, keep saying sorry, and Kashmiris should keep expecting that this apology keeps coming. But there needs to be redressal and closure. And for that, an admission of failure needs to be done.
Junaid Mathur, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Wajahat Habibullah, would you speak, please, against the motion?
First of all, may I say that, yes, I agree that certain things have happened in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and unfortunately, I was part of that system, of which we need to be ashamed. But should India be ashamed of its record in Jammu and Kashmir? Let me say that at the time that the state acceded to India, one matter was accepted by India as a part of the accession, and that was that the identity of Kashmir would be kept preserved. And we have done that. We've had a clause in our constitution which has survived all these years, Article 370. Now, those who are opposed will say that no, this article has been compromised, and laws have been made thereafter which have compromised this article. But then who made those laws? Those laws were all passed by the state government, through assemblies elected by the people of the state. It was not something that was thrust in violation of Article 370 on the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And there were the Beg Partha-Saathi talks which resulted in the Farooq Indira Accord, which allowed the state government to review all those laws which were enforced on that state after 1953. And the state government was given the authority to actually rescind those laws which it actually felt were against the interests of the state. And I remember speaking to Mirza Afzal Beg, who was at that time law minister of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. A committee was set up under Devi Das Thakur, a retired justice of the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir. And Mr. Beg Sahab said to me, "Ab ye kya cheez hai jisko dobara dekhna hai? These are all laws. Do we not want the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in the state of J&K? Do we not want the Election Commission to be operative in J&K?" So yes, although I agree, there have been matters of which we need to be ashamed. But we must also recognize the state is now recovering from an insurgency. And as the general said, also in proxy war in that state, which has lasted for 20 years. The state is now recovering from it. And yes, I would certainly give credit. I would certainly give credit to the people of Jammu and Kashmir that they have actually risen above that and renounced violence.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm slightly surprised, I must say, to find you on this side of the motion. Looking at page 130 of your book, My Kashmir, you say, even though the protection of human rights is institutionalized at both the state and national levels, this mechanism's effectiveness in ensuring that the public receives protection is questionable.
Correct.
questionable protection of human rights.
Correct.
That's
And
nothing
this
to
is
be proud of, is it?
correct. And I agree that there are certain things of which we do not need to be proud. And
That you, in fact, should be ashamed of.
also
Not just not
yes,
proud.
Yes,
It's more than a red face, isn't it?
But Tim, that is the question that I put.
You have more than a red
Yes,
face.
Tim, that's the question I put first personally. I said that there are certain things of which we need to be ashamed.
You say also reports of human rights violation were investigated by the
Yeah.
civil authority and remedial action
And I happen
sought,
to be a
but,
civil
but
authority.
repression continued.
That's true also.
So the Indian state was responsible for repression
There was.
in Jammu and Kashmir.
But let please put it in the context of what I said. The state, I mean, under
So you're saying the state has
uprising,
made amends for this?
the state, yes, the state is seeking to make amends. And certainly, with the help of the people of the state, we can set matters right. The matter is that the whole state was disrupted.
Well, wouldn't the
over
first
last
thing
20 years.
to do, if you were going to set matters right, would be to have some justice, wouldn't it?
Correct.
I mean, in 2010, Parvez Imroz, a lawyer who is leading the Jammu and Kashmir coalition of civil society, said there were 458 cases from 1990 to 2006, 458 cases in which investigations had implicated security forces personnel. But permission for prosecution was not forthcoming. 458 cases.
My dear Tim, I had explained to Parvez Imroz, I was at the time Chief Information Commissioner. I said human rights violation by the security forces can be investigated under orders of the Chief Information Commissioner. Please come to me with your cases.
Yeah, but it's not coming.
One case came before me.
458 cases, he
So
cites.
one case came before me. It's all right to write. You may write 3,000 cases. But bring those cases before the authority who can remedy it.
The UN Special Rapporteur who visited Kashmir in March this year said he was deeply concerned, along with the National Human Rights Commission. And in his reports, the Special Rapporteur quotes the National Human Rights Commission as saying, on occasion, extrajudicial executions have become virtually a part of state policy.
Unfortunately, that has been the case.
That is a terrible accusation, isn't it?
That has been
against
the
the
case.
state?
And also, I have also reported on that.
Extrajudicial executions
The first case...
virtually a part of state policy?
The first case the National Human Rights Commission took cognizance of was a report made by me on the firing in Bij Bihara, which I just considered unjustified and unjustifiable. Again, these are
So nothing
incidents-
can justify that, extrajudicial
Certainly not.
executions.
They cannot be justified.
So there's no return from a position of shame then?
No, a position of shame for that, for those extrajudicial killings. But should the Indian state be ashamed? Also, if I may say, I was part of that system.
Are you shocked
Here-
by this? Are you shocked by this?
But my dear Tim, let me explain. The point is that as part of that Indian state, I was within the government protesting against such things happening.
All right.
So the Indian state doesn't have to be, the Indian state within
you
itself
took
contained
the
mechanisms.
shame for them. All right.
Well, okay, I was ready to take the
Wajahat
shame. I
Habibullah.
nearly got my life lost in the
Wajahat
bargain.
Habibullah, thank you very much indeed. All right, okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a question to the audience. Is Kashmir still worth fighting for? Join us in a moment. Welcome back. I'm The Outsider, and our motion under debate tonight, India should be ashamed of its record in Kashmir. A few moments ago, I asked the audience a slightly different question. Is Kashmir still worth fighting for? Well, the audience has spoken. The vote is in. 81% of you said it is worth fighting for. 19% said it isn't. Vinda Grover, are you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised at all. It's very much on predictable lines. I think...
But you don't agree with it, do you?
I don't. I don't agree with it. I think the people of India have been misinformed, denied information, and as we saw on the panel today also, instead of providing information, what the general played on was your emotions about sacrifice of soldiers. That is not the issue in debate. What is happening over there? Nobody is condoning the loss of any life. What we need to ask ourselves, why are we there? What is the history of this accession? Was Kashmir ever a part of India?
Okay, all right. General Jaswal, I want to bring you in. Fully in line, the vote? Fully in line with your views?
Yeah, very much. We have to, let me tell you.
You spent half your military career in
Yes,
Kashmir,
I have
didn't you?
spent almost half my career there. J&K till 26th of October was not part of India. But when it was signed, it became part of India. And once the ceasefire took place, independence was declared, and after that this continued and ceasefire took place, I think on the 8th of August, 48 or so. 3 conditions were put forth. One was immediate cessation of hostilities. 2, forces to withdraw back to its initial position. Now the initial position that time spoken was because...
Briefly, please, briefly. I just need a brief comment and then I'm going to go to the open debate.
Okay.
Just briefly. Junaid Matter, do you want to come in on this?
I think the question as it's been put is misplaced. Why should we talk in terms of a fight? If Kashmiris are Indians, whom are we waging this war against? And do we need to wage this war? It has moral costs, it has diplomatic costs, and inherently it has financial costs.
Wajahat Habibullah.
Well, I would certainly stand with the resolution that it is worth fighting for. I love the people of that state. I love the Kashmiris particularly. I have always fought for them. I nearly gave my life to them, and I would willingly give my life to them for them today.
All right, okay. Just a reminder then of the motion that we are discussing tonight. India should be ashamed of its record in Kashmir. If you have a question, please put your hand up and we'll get a microphone to you. Lady in the red, up there.
So I have a question for the against panel. So you said right now it's a political decision. As a common man, I still fear to enter Kashmir. It's because I find that it's not a war for the democracy of the country, but it's a political war where the common man is sacrificing and not benefiting at all.
Wajahat Habibullah.
I'd be happy to answer that. For the first part is that you don't have to be afraid at all. I go to Kashmir quite often. I realize that I'm a senior government official, so I'm given security, but otherwise, after my office, I walk around in Kashmir in Firan or in local clothes. I go to the worship in the local mosques with local people. There is no danger at all in Kashmir. And I would like to tell the entire audience this. Feel free to visit Kashmir whenever you feel like it. There is no threat. There is no threat at all.
But she still feels afraid. Why do you
There is no need to
afraid?
feel a threat. Because of the fact that the media often reports...
I know you say there's no need. I'm asking her why she feels afraid.
So when I read the paper today, what the case study was being given today, we saw that around 40 bodies were found of localites were buried on an unsound places where we don't know also, in Kashmir. Those bodies were unidentified of the localites, Kashmiri people. So how can we trust that a non-Kashmiri will survive there?
It's not difficult. You see, under Muslim strict Wahhabi law, you are not supposed to mark a grave. The grave is not supposed to carry any marks at all. You will find all the graves of the prophets in Saudi Arabia, you will not find them. They're not marked.
Vrinder Grover.
And in Kashmir also they had this tradition of not marking the graves.
Okay.
It's only now recently that it started marking
Vrinder
graves.
Grover wants to
If I may come in
here.
on this. On the question of the unmarked graves, the State Human Rights Commission of Jammu and Kashmir has, through its own independent investigation, has verified that, yes, there are over almost 2,900 bodies. These are unmarked graves. There's an investigation that's required. There's a probe that's required. Who are these people?
Okay,
the
all right.
government has refused to do anything about it.
Okay, General Jaswal, do you want to come on this?
I'd just like to chip in for this thing. Now, when you're talking about human rights, human rights are the rights and freedoms of every human to which he's entitled. I would like to ask Vrinda, when a soldier joins the armed forces, does he say farewell to his rights? Has the Human Rights Commission ever considered the rights of a soldier? Never. The victim is the soldier. His vertical rights are being protected.
All right, Vrinder Grover, do you want to come back on that?
Not being protected, but the terrorists, his rights are being protected. Now, I'll also like to...
Let her answer that point. You made a big point there. May I come in on this question
of the terrorist versus the soldier? Anybody who goes before the Human Rights Commission, their case is considered. We would like to see facts and figures where soldiers' cases have not been considered. Who is a terrorist? Parveena Ahangar's young son picked up in 1990. Nobody knows where he is. The High Court of Jammu and Kashmir says, after a judicial inquiry, that we must prosecute 3 army officers. The Home Ministry of the Government of India says, no, we will not grant sanction. She is saying, if my son is a militant, please punish him. How has he disappeared?
Okay, General
People don't
Jaswal.
disappear.
General Jaswal, isn't that protection? Aren't there enough protections built into the Armed Forces Special Powers Act for,
Yeah,
for
of
the
course,
soldiers
they're-
themselves? More than any other state?
Yeah, of course. But you see, whenever any government servant is acting in good faith, he cannot be arrested till the time a government sanction is taken.
So he's above the law.
Yeah, he's not above the
case,
law.
yes.
He's not above the law because the circumstances under which he's functioning, that needs to be taken into account. And that is the reason MOD does not give the sanction, the government doesn't give the sanction.
Brenda Grover,
There
you
are
wanna comment on-
1,500 cases which have been reported, out of which only 35 have been proved right.
Let me
All right,
clarify.
Exaggeration.
Brenda
This
Grover.
is an in-house investigation done by the army. You cannot be a judge prosecutor in your own case. The army cannot sit on inquiry on itself and tell us, no, there is no case made out. What are the people asking for? Just 1 minute. All that the people of Kashmir are saying, please put my case before the ordinary court of law. They want to go to the regular judicial system from which you and I get justice. That is all they are
Okay,
asking.
Wajahat
Figures are
Habibullah.
not mine,
Wajahat
they're the state
Habibullah.
government.
If I may intercede on this point, 2 points. One is on the question of unmarked graves. Now, she had made a reference in general to unmarked graves. Your question, her answer was with particular reference to unmarked graves found in Kupwara, where the suspect point is, yes, I agree with her in that point. The suspect point is that there are far too many bodies in one particular graveyard. The question is not one of being unmarked. That is not the suspicious point. The suspicious point is that there are large number of graves there, which certainly requires to be looked into. Now, so far, the other question is concerned,
Very
yes,
briefly,
the
very
matter, this matter has been discussed with the Home Ministry about the sanctions that have been given or not. The CBI itself has reported in certain cases.
Central Bureau
and
of Investigation.
has inquired and found certain persons guilty. In that case, the Ministry of Home Affairs is taking a fresh look at these matters.
Okay, all right.
And reviewing these
All right,
matters.
Junaid
So
Mathur.
it is on the positive line,
Junaid Mathur.
positive trend.
I would take it from what Wajahat Saab has said about the unmarked grave controversy that has erupted, although it's a very creative explanation of why the graves are unmarked. There have been human rights abuses,
Yes.
and those
I would
could have
agree.
resulted in unidentified graves. There have been extrajudicial executions, as Tim has spoken about. As far as we look at the situation as a whole, has there been immunity for the armed forces, is my question. Yes, there has been immunity for the armed forces. So the battle Kashmiris have been waging has not been against the people of India. It has been against a system of India which has dug its heels and has said we are above the law, we can never commit anything wrong in Kashmir. And the military establishment, the military apparatus as such, and there is no surprise that an army leader would ever say that my soldiers have erred. That has never happened, and that is not how states and armies function. So they can't be they can't be culprits, they can't represent themselves in their own courts, and they can't pronounce judgments on their
All right.
own faults.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the gentleman.
Can I just respond to just a minute?
Very briefly, because
No,
we need
this
to
is
move on. We've
wrong
got a lot
that
of
we
questions.
do not accept. There have been cases, that's the reason we have punished 39 officers, 9 JCOs, and 56 OR. Look at the ratio.
What punishment did they get?
They've been court-martialed, some of them have been
what-
dismissed.
Yeah?
Some of
Just a
them-
dismissal.
Yeah, dismissal, hell of a lot. If in case they were found for a human right violation, if there's a murder or something, well, of course, he's been punished
what?
accordingly.
So what? They've had life in prison, have they?
I
Anybody
think
been
some of them
sentenced-
have got. I don't have
Anybody
the details.
sentenced to
I don't
life in
have them.
prison?
They've
or-
been given.
Or just a slap on the wrist?
No. It's a big punishment.
Okay. Gentleman in the second row behind you. Yeah.
My question is directed to General Jaiswal. Sir, I really respect the sacrifices that our Indian soldiers make. Standing there, fighting for our country, in Kashmir. But what I want to know, that why is it that our troops need that legal immunity according to Armed Forces Special Powers Act? I mean, all of the clauses make sense to me from a strategic point of view. But why are we are the biggest democracy in the world, and are we so afraid to admit to our mistakes?
Okay.
I
General Jaswal.
would like to say, if there
General
is a
Jaswal.
mistake, I'll be the first one to say there is a mistake. That's what I was saying, even in Machal case. Probably there is a mistake and the people will be punished.
Okay, but why do
As
you
far
need the
as-
Armed Forces Special Powers
I'll tell
Act?
you.
That's the question.
The background of the Armed Forces Special Power Act was, it was a provision enacted to help the forces perform in hostile environment. When hostile environment...
I understand that, but my question
just a
is
minute.
about the legal immunity.
Legal immunity. I'm
The
just
legal
trying to
immunity
say, what
in
will
the Armed
happen
Forces
is,
Special Powers Act.
Otherwise, every second day, you'll find 5, 10, 15, 100 people being called to the police station. How does the force become effective?
May I come in on the immunity question that was raised by?
Yes, come in on that.
Thank you for that question. I think that's precisely at the heart of the impunity under AFSPA. Why
Under the Armed Forces
under the
Special
Armed
Powers
Forces
Act.
Special Powers Act?
Immunity, not impunity.
Well, the immunity
Immunity.
leads to the impunity, and that is where the
Section
impunity,
7.
it's what gives birth to the impunity. Section 7 of J&K AFSPA. What I would like to say to General Jaspal when he says people will file complaints. People may file complaints. We have a system of investigation. We have a judiciary. Just like all of us put our faith in it, why does the army not respect these institutions?
But sorry.
Please put your faith in it. They will investigate. If it's a false complaint, it'll be thrown out. The case will be closed. In case it goes to the court may at any stage close
Okay,
the case
General
if it's a
Jaspal.
false
It is
case.
not that.
Why are we creating this segregated citizenship?
You made your
Brenda,
point.
we are
General
supposed
Jaspal.
to maintain a particular strength in a unit. I'll find half my unit in the police station and the courts. Because every now and then they'll be going there.
I don't think that's
No,
a
no, it's a
reasonable
fact.
answer at all.
Let's go back to the question. What do you think?
My question was about the legal immunity in the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Why must there be a legal immunity for our troops? Why can't they comply with all the other laws, with all the other strategic clauses that are mentioned in the AFSPA?
You see, if in case every time a soldier is being called to the police station for investigation, false or right, his morale keeps going down. He will not function. He will not function. We require an effective force. An effective
So
force...
this is all about soldiers' morale.
Yes.
Yes,
If I could just interject there.
It does make a
What about the
difference.
rights of people?
If I could just...
It does make a difference.
Junaid Matu.
The most heartening thing in this debate today, as a Kashmiri, as the lone Kashmiri on this panel, is that there is a debate between an Indian audience and somebody who has represented the armed forces about the role of the army. The Indian nation should not be ashamed of what it has done in Kashmir, but the Indian nation should certainly ask questions of its leadership and of the armed forces. Have you kind of mistaken the moral authority we have invested in you and abused it in Kashmir? And do we have to bear the moral costs of that?
Okay. I'm going to move on. Question, a gentleman in the front row, please.
So my question is to General Jaiswal. Sir, I'm quoting you over here. You said the psychological dislocation caused by separatists and Pakistan is paralyzing the state of Kashmir.
Yeah.
So do you seriously believe that the acts by Indian Army have no role to play in this?
No, I totally confess, wherever we have gone wrong, like in Handwara, there was a case of Major Rahman in 2004. The man was dismissed straight away. The army dealt with it. We took the case and within 1 year, 6 months rather, he was dismissed. At times, mistakes do happen unintentionally.
Sir,
Now, that is a place where the people are getting...
Only unintentionally?
Yes, sir.
No, at times they're intentionally also, they're punished. I don't hide it. I don't hide
Under the
it.
Public Safety Act, people are detained for 2 years, for a period of 2 years, without even telling them what their crime was. And
Then
just
you
under-
ask the
just under
state government.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Sir,
Habibullah will talk about the PSA.
I'm just telling you, you only said that the army has no role to play in all this. But sir, when you say psychological dislocation of people in Kashmir, sir, acts like these cause that. That's what I'm telling you.
Vrinda Grover, I want to bring you in.
I think first just on language. These are not mistakes or wrongs. These are crimes. And therefore one is requiring justice for them. On your question, yes, Public Safety Act, AFSPA have become symbols of hate, and there are reasons. Incidentally, AFSPA has a colonial origin. The British brought it in against the Quit India movement. So let's see what is the relationship we have with the people of Kashmir.
Okay, Wajahat Habibullah.
Yes, I'd like to respond to your question regarding the Public Safety Act. I would agree with you that law is not a law that is any further required. And in fact, I have advised the state government to please withdraw the state government.
Why is it still there then?
You see, the state government has made amendments to the law. Under that law, you could even arrest juniors, juveniles, and put them in prison. And it was done in that particular thing of 2011. They exactly did that. A number of juveniles were arrested and put. And in response to that, we said, please withdraw that. In response to I don't know if in response to our representation, but certainly the state government amended that, and now you can no longer arrest juveniles under that law. But the law is anti-democratic. It is more draconian than TADA was, and it is more draconian in many ways apart from the fact that it doesn't allow you to kill, but it can allow you to arrest without warrant and keep people inside the jug for a very, very long time.
All right,
and therefore, it is a law that the state government should withdraw, and this is within the hands of the state government.
Okay, I'm going to move on, take a question for this side of the motion. So, gentleman there, sitting on the edge. Yes, you. Yeah.
Ma'am, the motion specifically reads, should India be ashamed and whether of its accord and not if army is violating the human rights? Is the army doing nothing in Kashmir other than violating the human rights? Has the army not provided the people of Kashmir with a base on which they can't just say, another day, another leader might come up and say, I am your leader, and the people have to listen to him.
Is the story all bad for the army?
I think what we need to understand, Kashmir is a political issue. You will not find a solution through the military route. That is the basic flaw in the strategy and in what you are assuming over here.
Okay.
The army cannot resolve this. It's not part of their mandate. It's a political negotiation.
But may I concede at this particular point? The army and Vrinda Grover would be unanimous in saying that yes, this issue cannot be resolved by the army. But let me say that the point that you have made to bring the matter to this point, where now the question is now being talked about as to how to resolve, negotiated about, and in dialogue with Pakistan on the one hand, in dialogue within the state of Jammu and Kashmir with the people of that state as to what can be the resolution. The fact that they've been brought to this by peaceful means to come to resolution, that is to the credit of the army, and you must give credit to the army for that.
But the debate is not army-centric.
Yes.
We are neither asking you to laud the debate of the army, nor are we telling you...
the role of the army.
That's correct.
The role of the army, nor are we asking you to tell us if you're proud of the army or ashamed of the army.
Correct.
It can be a mixed bag of things they've done there. What we're asking you is that as a state, have your policies been counterproductive and self-defeating, and have they violated the ethics that your democracy and your founding fathers had enshrined to protect?
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the gentleman in the brown shirt. Yeah.
I'm going to direct this question to the fore. I speak from first-hand experience. In fact, I was in Kashmir just beginning of this year, and most likely I'm going to be in Kashmir once again beginning of next year to snowboard. And, you know, honestly, I came across...
Have a nice holiday.
Thank you. I had a phenomenal time. So I came in direct contact with the people that were there, and I've come across some of the nicest people, some of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. And
So what is your point?
That they are.
Well, what's your question? Can we come to that?
The point that I'm trying to drive here is that I came in contact with these people, and I did not feel like these people were violated of their human rights. I think to a very far extent, we feel... I think to a very far extent, we are speculating on many of the things that we come across in news that have been hyped up to a very far extent.
Okay, where are you from?
I'm from India. I'm from here.
Okay, all right. Vrinda Grover.
Yeah. I think, I don't know why they did not share it with you. Perhaps you did not inspire the confidence. I would not be able to say.
No, that's unfair.
What one is talking about here, is are narratives that are very commonplace. In 2010, anybody who visited, and I visited in October, and we brought out this report, it has testimonies after testimonies of people. This was not concocted. These are by journalists and sociologists. I think to say that, you know, everybody is happy, yes, there is what is called normalcy and calm, particularly when people go on holiday or people vote in elections. I repeat, what happened in 2010 took everybody by surprise. Where is that rage coming from? Why were they out there? There is a political dispute. Let's dialogue about it. Let's converse about it. It's not going to be resolved by firing on anybody.
All right, General.
There is an issue of injustice. It's lurking out there.
General
It keeps
Jaswal.
bursting out.
General Jaswal.
Vrinda, I think I totally agree with you. It's not a military solution. There's no doubt on it. It's a political solution, but before a political solution ensues, a conducive environment has to come in where the terrorists have to be absolutely capped. Otherwise, there can be no political solution. That is how the army comes in over there. And so military is an important adjunct to the solution. It is not the one which is going to do the solution.
All right, okay.
Second point, which...
Very briefly, we're running out of time.
Yeah, second point, time and again I find that human rights violation is always dubbed against the security forces. Why never against the terrorists? I would like to ask, have they ever raised an issue against the terrorists?
Okay.
They've cut the tongue, ear of the people. I don't want to say the rest of the thing.
Okay, I'm going to bring
women.
Junaid Matu.
Again, going back to the topic for the umpteenth time, we are talking about the role of the Indian state in Kashmir. We are not condoning what the terrorists have done. Why should it be that the terrorists have done so and so? Why not blame them too? We are not squarely blaming the Indian army. But as a Kashmiri, I belong to a mainstream party. I believe in the Indian system. I believe that Kashmiris can be a part of the Indian story. I want equal rights. And I have a bigger grouse against India because India should have protected my constitutional rights and my human rights as a state, which it failed to do.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the point we are going to vote on the motion that India should be ashamed of its record in Kashmir. If you want to vote for the motion, that is the side represented by those on my right, you're going to need to press button 1. If you want to vote against the motion, the side represented by those on my left, it's button 2. Whichever button you want to press, please do so now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the result is in. The audience has spoken. 44% of you said India should be ashamed. 56% of you said it shouldn't. So the motion has been rejected. Let's just look, if we may, at how you voted before the debate. Before the debate, it was 55% of you who said that India should be ashamed, and 45% of you said it shouldn't. So there has been a, 9%, 10% swing towards those against the motion. Brinda Grover, how do you feel about that? You lost them somewhere along the way.
That's all right. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of a conversation. I would just say, let's talk about Kashmir. Let's hear the people of Kashmir. Let's visit the people of Kashmir. And let's not depend on what media reports tell us. Media reports are not truthful on this count.
Junaid Matu, briefly.
I would state the same thing. Kashmiris want to move on. They don't want to be stuck in the past. As far as the motion goes, we both put our facts and kind of analysis in front of you. And I hope that the Indian state has the magnanimity and the greatness to kind of redress what has happened in Kashmir.
And I think Junaid and I did not really have such a major difference. The fact is that the country, the nation of India does not need to be ashamed. Yes, there are certain things that we need to be ashamed of, and those things we must do work hard to try and rectify. And I think all of us agree on that.
General Jaswal, narrow victory.
I ditto the same, but at the same time, I would also like to highlight that we must take steps to integrate this beautiful state into the mainstream. And we must take all steps, all wrongs that have been done, they should be punished.
All right, okay. Thank you very much indeed. All that I have to do is to thank you, the panelists, and you, the audience, here in Mumbai and around the world. Never forget that we're only a click away from you at www.theoutsider.tv, and we're always glad to hear your thoughts and observations. From all of us on the programme, goodbye.